not for a quarter, and not for a dollar. Same nuts will come out. We don't have time to go into that, but it's a sociological study, very fascinating, why they were victims of the cults during this period. Sixthly, the true gospel teaches that baptism is to be done for the remission of sins. Your sins are not forgiven until you have been baptized according to Campbellite theology and in the Campbellite way. This baptism was referred to in the early writings, and it's in black and white, as baptismal regeneration or baptismal salvation. Seventhly, the baptism given by all other churches is not saving. You have to be baptized the Campbellite way, according to Campbellite theology, or you're not in. So even though as a Southern Baptist you were immersed, that's not good enough. And if you were simply sprinkled as a baby, all hope is gone for you. Eighthly, only Bible names should be used in the name of a church. Thus, there was the initial fight over, is it the Church of Christ? Is it the Christian church? The disciples of Christ, the Christadelphians mean the brothers of Christ. Later we'll see how the Mormons call themselves the Church of Jesus Christ because of that influence. I had an aunt who was a member of the Christian church. I remember her one time sitting in my grandmother's living room, and I was just a young Christian, and she said, "Now, well, Bobby, you see, you attend the Baptist church, which has man's name, Baptist. You won't find that in the Bible." Of course, I was immediately thinking of John the Baptist, at least the word is there. And she said, "Well, I go to the Christian church. Our name comes right straight out of the Bible." And I said, "Yeah, but Aunt Bertha, wasn't it the unbelievers who developed the name Christian? So that the Christians were called that by unsaved people? So God didn't give the name, unbelievers did." Her jaw fell open. Well, no. The Christian church was given the name by God. But you see, the Bible names for Bible churches. So you can't use the name Baptist, Catholic, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, or whatever it is. Interesting to point out that after they were thrown out by the Presbyterians and thrown out by the Baptists, they called themselves Reformed Baptists. That is, in their early days, they didn't use Bible names for the names of their congregations. Ninthly, nothing should be allowed in the church unless there is, quote, book, chapter, and verse, end quote. This last requirement of the Restoration movement led to 1,001 splits, where one church would have musical instruments and the next one wouldn't. One would allow a pitch pipe and one wouldn't. One believed in Sunday schools and the other one didn't. One had missionary societies and this one didn't. So when you deal with this whole restorationist movement, which split into myriads of sects, you have such a plethora of doctrinal positions. One gets lost in the maze. In one Church of Christ publication, they gave a list of 110 issues that have split the movement down through the years, be it from pitch pipes to choirs. Now remember, if you've got to have book, chapter, and verse for everything, you're going to have problems. I'm surprised someone hadn't talked about pews. No pews were listed in the Bible. Neither was air conditioning, you say. We can add those to the list. Tenthly, some Campbellite theologians have now moved further in the direction of process theology. They teach that God is not omniscient. He does not know the future. Particularly the Gospel Plan of Salvation by W.T. Brents, published by the Gospel Advocate Company in Nashville, Tennessee. Just some significant dates for you to jot down. In 1809, Thomas Campbell, the father, was censored by the Presbyterian Church for false teaching. They were originally Presbyterians. In that same year, he wrote, quote, "Declaration and Address," end quote, for the, quote, "the Christian Association of Washington." That statement of faith served as their creed for many, many years. When someone tells me, no creed but Christ, it means they have a creed, but they don't want to put it on the table because it means it's open to debate. 1809, the son Alexander Campbell arrives in the United States as another immigrant from Scotland and joins his father. 1811, the association becomes an independent church after being rejected by the Presbyterians once again. 1812, the Campbells give up on Presbyterianism, and this is very important, and went over to the Baptists, where they were baptized by immersion by a Baptist clergyman. This was in 1812, and they were baptized at Buffalo Creek. This isn't far from Uniontown, Pennsylvania. This was 15 years before they accepted the doctrine that you must be baptized in a certain way according to a certain theology for remission of salvation. 1813, the Campbells joined the Redstone Baptist Association. 1820, Alexander Campbell is so committed to the Baptist cause that he publicly defends the Baptist Church in debates against Presbyterians. For example, he did a debate with John Walker, a Presbyterian, and these records are still extant. 1823, in August, the Redstone Baptist Association prepares to censor the Campbells for teaching false doctrine. They resign and set up their own independent Baptist church. In October of that year, Campbell once again represents the Baptists in a debate against the Presbyterians. He calls himself, quote, a Reformed Baptist, end quote. And the whole group referred to themselves as Reformed, meaning reorganized Baptists, end quote. In 1827, Walter Scott discovers the lost gospel, that baptism is essential for salvation, that in order to obtain forgiveness of sins, you must be baptized by immersion, and it must be specifically stated and understood that's why you're being baptized. In 1813, Campbell's group they were now calling themselves the Disciples of Christ. They united with Scott's group, who called themselves simply the Christians. Isn't that humble? We are the Christian church. In 1849, controversy over missionary society splits the Restoration movement, and the fragmentation begins. 1860s, when they begin to argue over musical instruments, a piano and organ, down to whether or not you could have a harmonica. 1906, the Churches of Christ list themselves as a separate denomination apart from the Disciples of Christ and the Christian Church. All of these movements, each claiming that they are the original heirs of the Campbells. 1920s, when I studied the historical documents at various Church of Christ seminaries, such as in Cincinnati and colleges, that's when the multitude of splits began in great earnest. And they began to fight over everything. You see, once you take that idea, you can't have anything in the church, but you have a tag and you can write a verse on it. You have opened yourself up to absurdum. How far will you go with that kind of theology? Just quickly, in terms of the Campbellite movement being the father or the mother of various cultic groups, in terms of Campbellism and Mormonism, Joseph Smith surrounded himself with the following men who taught him the idea of restoration. So when the Mormon missionaries come to your home and they pull out the flannel graph, or they have their colored pictures, what do they tell you?